So, hi, it's Mark here. Just a quick word from me before we get into this week's podcast. I just want to give a public shout out to the wonderful patrons who've got behind the podcast and are supporting James and myself on Patreon. So, just to run through the most recent patrons, James and I would especially like to thank Brenda Kuczynski, Bridget, Chain Edmonston, CJ Hunt, Eric Vick, Gary Sherwin, Holly Thompson, Jason Hamilton, Jennifer Coleman, Julia V, Kelly Byrne, Kenesha, Lee Torner, Louis Petron, Melinda Craig, Michelle Webb, Nina Barton, Parker Hudson, and Tom Fowler. Thank you very, very much for your support. It really does mean an awful lot to James and me to know that you are enjoying the podcast and prepared to get behind us and give us a little bit of support. So thank you to all of those. And without any further ado, let's get into this week's podcast.
Two writers, one just starting out, the other a bestseller. Join James Blatch and Mark Dawson and their amazing guests as they discuss how you can make a living telling stories. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Hello and welcome to the Self-Publishing Formula Podcast with Mark Dawson and James Blatch. Hope you've had a really good and productive week. And delighted you've joined us again. We've got two author interviews in a row. This is the second of them. And this is somebody we've had on the podcast previously, but she's had even more success since we last spoke to her. This is Mel Sherratt, who is an SPF friend.
She is, yes. We had her on before, I think, with Rachel Abbott. So two very big selling UK authors. I think it's probably fair to say that Mel is a hybrid author, so she's published herself with under her own steam, and also with some publishers as well. I think she might be with Thomas & Mercer as well. So yeah, Mel's got lots and lots of experience, sold tons of books, and she writes from Stoke, which is where my brother moved to after university. So I've been to Stoke a few times. It is a gritty area of the UK in the Midlands. And she set some of her fiction in there in the estates. I suppose you probably say for American listeners, Sink Estates in Stoke. So kind of slightly hard scrabble areas where life is a bit tougher perhaps than in other areas. And Mel's carved out that kind of, what does she call it? Kind of grit lit. She's made that little niche or niche all to herself, and has done really, really well with it. So. She's a good example of a hard-working writer who has demonstrated that you don't need to be writing in the kind of the mega big thriller, action, adventure, romance genres to have a really successful self-publishing career.
Yeah, absolutely. And in addition to all of that, we did a brilliant photo bomb of Mel at the London Book Fair, which does crop up in the interview. You need to watch this episode on YouTube to see that and fully appreciate it. Okay, let's hear from Mel. Mel, welcome back to the Self-Publishing Formula Podcast. We did have a brief chat at London Book Fair back in the day, well, last year, 2016, I think. But we said there and then that we wanted to have you on because we're all excited about your career, and you've had amazing success. I mean, I think every one of your books has at one point or another been a bestseller, right? Has become a bestseller.
Yeah, crazily so, yes, definitely.
Not crazily so. It's because they're good books, Mel, and you're good at marketing. So let's talk about you first, so people understand who you are and your background and when you got into writing.
I started writing in 1999, getting serious about it, but I literally wrote 3 chapters of the same book and honed them 3 chapters for quite some years before I decided to send them out to get an agent. And then I had interest from an agent. That was back in my women's fiction days when I used to write chick lit, to be honest.
Do you know, Mark and I have just recorded a podcast, and I used the words chick lit and got ticked off by him about that. He said that's so 1980s, you can't say that anymore, and it should be women's lit. But
I love it.
I thought a lot of women describe themselves as chick lit writers, and I don't really see a problem with it. But there you go, you've helped me out.
Well, to be honest, there's so many different genres out there that if you do say chick lit, everybody knows exactly what you're talking about, and mine does fit that chick lit genre completely. It's just about shoes and shopping and friendship and love, and there's obviously a lot of deeper women's fiction books out there now, but yeah, mine are definitely chick lit. Talk about coffee and shoes, my love of my life. So I had an agent for 3 years. I think that was way back 2004, 2006. And we worked on this same book, this women's fiction book, for probably all that time. And I did 8 different reader reports with, and what she'd do is she'd get somebody to read it, send it back, I'd do all the work on it, and then she'd get somebody else to read it, and they'd change their minds. And I ended up working on this book for so long, it was so frustrating. And then she retired. So I'm not quite sure if she dumped me or not, to be fair, but I did realise later on down the line that she had retired. I started working as a housing officer then, and I started watching Shameless. And I love Coronation Street and soaps. So the main thing for me then was I started to get a bit darker with my writing, and I started to write what I call it grit lit, and it's in between women's fiction and crime. I got another agent, and I was with her for 3 years, and we tried to, I think we took about 4, I was probably on my 5th book that by then. I was writing with her 1 a year and trying to get it published, and just weren't being successful because they were cross-genre. And then I wrote a police procedural because that's what she asked me to do, maybe try to be different, not try to be different this time, try to go in with the mainstream. And that got rejected because it was too much like Martina Cole or too much like Linda LaPlante, or they got somebody else on the books like them. So I just come to the conclusion that unless I do something about it myself, I'm not going to get anywhere. And the good old Kindle was on the market then. So in 2011, I decided to self-publish and just haven't looked back since then. It just literally just took off.
So we'll talk about the marketing or the self-publishing aspects in a moment. And I'm aware that our American audience, which quite a lot of American audience, may not know what Coronation Street is, Corrie. And I think Shameless has transferred, hasn't it, to America? I think there is a US yes. Shameless. So that's obviously people will be perhaps familiar with that as a kind of working class British council estate set. I mean, it's a comedy drama, wasn't it? It was funny as well as
it was. Yes. Yeah, it was.
And Corrie, how do we describe our lovely Corrie to an American audience?
It's basically a soap opera about people that live on a street and the ups and downs they get into, the relationships, and they have some hard-hitting subjects on there, which is what I like to cover as well. But there's always a sense of there's always somebody there to help you get out of a situation, and some people get you into the situations, but there's always people there to help you as well. So it's just about basic life.
And what was it about those? I mean, the community aspects of it, you sort of drew out then, the fact that there's always somebody there to help you out of it, even if potentially there was somebody there who got you into trouble in the first place. But that community, I can feel that that's something that's pervasive in your books.
It's very important to me. I think that was because I was a housing officer at the time, and there was a huge community spirit on the estate that I worked on. And I just felt like there were so many different stories that you could tell about behind closed doors without being too violent. And yes, there is a lot of violence in some of my books, but a lot of them, it is just a case of you are so down sometimes that you think you're not going to get out of a situation, and then you can. So I just wanted to put different issues into different books. So I do touch on a lot of things like self-harm, there's domestic violence, there's social services, probably not an American thing, but having your child taken away from you and then trying to either get that child back or get on with your life again and raise other children and start again, really. So, and then I turned to murder.
Yeah. And then that famous sentence always creeps into a conversation at some point, and then I turn to murder. Okay. So you've actually got quite a few different series now. So there's Beresford. Eden Beresford is your detective, isn't she?
She is. I've got 2 detective series, yeah. I have 2 books out with Eden Beresford, hence I've got the scooters on the wall at the back because she's my inner mod, and I live my life through her, to be honest. And I have another series, DS Ali Shenton. There's 3 in a trilogy with that one, and that's set in my hometown of Stoke-on-Trent in the Midlands. And I have a series called the Estate Series, which is the one that I've just been talking to you about, which is basically Shameless meets Coronation Street.
Yeah, with those issues, but also what tone do you go for with those books? Because obviously you could be very bleak, or you could be the more comedic Shameless route. What have you chosen?
They're probably a bit of both, actually, and maybe that was why they were cross-genre. They were literally, sometimes you'd be laughing and joking with people as they were trying to get on with their lives. Other times you'd be really in the hard-hitting times with them and the domestic violence and that sort of thing. So they're... For that purpose, I think that's why they failed to hit the market of the women's fiction and also the basic crime thrillers, because obviously crime thrillers are more about the crime that's being committed and the justice, whereas these were more about the family and their lives and about the cause and effects of the crimes.
Okay, so Mel, take me back then to 2011, your decision to self-publish. You saw something going on. I mean, 2011 in this doesn't seem 5 minutes ago to me, but actually you're a bit of an early adopter, I would say, in this field. There can't have been... There was a band of you, but it wasn't like today where there are 500,000 people probably online doing a similar thing. So where did you start?
I actually started, I think it was really good timing for me. I knew that the Kindle was going to be the present under everybody's Christmas tree in 2011 Christmas. I'd watched Mark Edwards and Louise Voss come up in the rankings and Kerry Wilkinson, and there was a couple of others at that time. And because my book had just been rejected and it had been worked with my agent for quite a while, and I'd also had feedback from several of the editors at the big five publishing, the big six that were there. I just decided that if I didn't take it out now, I would never know. But before that, I wrote in the pen name. So just going back to the original agent that I had, working with the women's fiction book, I decided to take that out and under a pen name and have a go first, so as it didn't actually affect my career. And she just literally took off. It was one of those things. She was there for a few days, and then all of a sudden she was in the top 20. Just, I don't know whether it was the book at the time. There wasn't much competition as there is now, but because of that gave me a bit of confidence. I learned how to do it, how to market a bit on, from doing that book, because I couldn't tell anybody who I was, and that was a really hard thing to market. But I decided then just to have a go, and I knew that I needed to do it before Christmas, so I just literally did no market on it. I'd got a blog at the time called High Heels and Boot Deals, where I was talking about my writing career and how I was being rejected, and then writing the next book, etc., and then interviewing other authors. So I'd got a lot of feedback, and I had built up my network there, really. And I just put a blog post out on 8th of December 2011, just said, this is the book, this is the one that's been rejected all the time, it's 99 pence, if you think you might like it, then please share. And it just, I think it sold 34 copies the first month, and then in January it just exploded, and within 5 weeks it was in the top 10.
So in those days, you weren't doing a huge amount of marketing. I mean, you uploaded it. Did you do the formatting yourself and uploading yourself?
I did everything myself, yeah, with the help of a very good friend of mine called Tally Rowland, because she's an author and she'd just done it before me, so she was showing me everything, what to do if I was stuck. But I genuinely haven't done any marketing, even now. I've taken Mark's course, I've paid for it. I haven't done any Facebook marketing. I did it maybe a month and then just came away. I've just been so busy writing. I haven't done any Amazon ads or anything. The only marketing I've done is indirect from blogging and knowing people, really.
Well, I'm guessing in those early days that Amazon saw, so something happens, I don't know quite how you get the initial visibility. As you say, wasn't so much competition, but I know Amazon then kicks in and starts pushing your book because it sees that there's a take-up of it. I'm guessing that must have happened quite early on for you. So success breeds success, doesn't it, in that sense?
Yeah, I think that may have been what happened. And then obviously every book that you have out, then you have just got that tiny bit of audience that you've built up from the last one that they can send to. They know who bought your book, so that's a real good way of getting out there. And I think it's just a case of you have to just keep putting books out, but not as quickly as I've been putting them out for the last 18 months, putting that way. I'm actually drained, so I'm slowing down a bit now. Yeah, so you've got we'll go back to the books in a moment, but just to recap, you've got 3 series. Are they all live, those series? Ali Shenton, there is a trilogy, so I don't think there'll be any more of her now. Eden Beresford, I've written a couple. I'm not going to be doing any more for the foreseeable future. The estate series is always there, and people are always asking me when I'm going to be doing the next one. But sometimes, for me, I've moved on from a few of them now, and I would love to continue to write them. But there's so many ideas in my head now that I just want to move forward and do something else. So I'm writing a psychological thriller to self-publish at the moment.
Okay, and your chick lit, I'm going to use that expression just to annoy Mark. Your chick lit, is it Marcy Steele? I can't remember you're Marcy Steele. You are Marcy Steele. I haven't just uncovered you, have I? You have told people that.
No. No. For 3 years, though, I kept it. I think it might have been 3 years. Nobody knew who she was. I always talk about she, but nobody knew who she was.
Who is she? But that's live.
It is, yes. She's got 3 big sounds.
So no wonder you're drained.
Yes. Actually, this past 18 months, because I republished the first 2 Marcy Steele books, and I wrote a 3rd one and published them with Bookouture. So, and I did 2 Edens, and I did the 5 in 16 months, and it drained me completely.
And what's the operation like for you publishing now then? Do you have, presumably, I know I think last time we'd spoken, you just had a lot of your covers redone. You presumably go out to professionals for that. Did you get your formatting now done professionally? You've got VA, or you've got assistants to help you, and what's your setup?
No, it's just me still, James. I still keep thinking I need to get an assistant, but I just never find anybody, and I sit down and I write. What happens is that once I'm getting into a book, nothing else gets done, and unfortunately that's when I can't market. So that's why I'm going to take some time off now, and hopefully get the marketing done and learn it. But there's just it's just me, and I can only do so much. I have obviously a team behind me. I hire my own editor. I hire my own cover designer. Yes, like you say, I've just changed the estate series, and I've been very lucky with the publishers that I've worked with, because the editing has been good, and I've learned from them as I've gone along. So I haven't actually self-published a book since 2015, and I did it all myself before Vellum or anything came out then. So it's going to be very interesting putting the next one out, because I've got to learn it all again, really. Yeah. But I'm looking forward to the challenge. I'm looking forward to having the control of that book and seeing what I can do with it now after you guys have come along and done so much. It's given me an enthusiasm back to see what I can do now, off the back of everything I've done before, because you're probably the first one to know this, because I haven't actually gone live with it yet, but I've just clocked up 1 million sales.
Wow. Congratulations, Mel.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Considering I was 12 years rejection before putting the books out. So, yeah.
Well, it's just yet another example of how the old model didn't really work for everybody. It worked in part, but the gatekeeping system stopped writers finding readers rather than enabled them, and self-publishing has enabled writers finding their readers and vice versa, which is a great thing. 1 million sales. That's brilliant, Mel.
Thank you. And I think it's as well as social media has helped as well, not in the fact of share and buy my book, but the fact that I can talk to my readers on a regular basis, and I've got my Facebook page, and I know that I need to be doing more on there and haven't had the time. And I know people say that blogging doesn't work to sell books, but I don't do it to sell books, and I do it genuinely to interact with people, and that's what sells your books afterwards. And I haven't blogged for ages as well. I miss blogging, so I'm going to start doing that as well. I really enjoy talking about some of the TV programs that are on. I can talk about them and relate them to my books, because they are hard-hitting subjects. So I need to start doing things like that, and that's what I call indirect marketing. Yeah, it's been great, getting a mailing list up and then just talking to people all the time. And I have so many messages. It's fantastic. It's just it keeps up my spirit.
And I imagine you have quite a varied audience, because your books do vary from genre to genre. So you've probably got people, I guess, who might be local to the Midlands and like that kind of reflection of the area that they knew and grew up, and then, I don't know, just housewives and husbands in southern England reading, the psychological thrillers and stuff. You must have everyone.
I have, yeah. I mean, I've got I'm probably writing about 4 different genres. So the majority of my audience are women in the 30s to 60s. I can tell that from the Facebook stats that I have. But a lot of the they like the estate series, but they wouldn't actually cross over to Ali Shenton, and vice versa. Ali Shenton people wouldn't cross over to the estate series. I did think they would work and cross over, and they don't. You have to start every series from brand new and thinking that you may get new readers, but you might not necessarily cross over. And I think that's something I learned along the way, thinking that everybody would come on board, and they didn't. So you have to, just generate another audience. The same with Marcy, but obviously Marcy is totally different. Some of them will cross over because some of them say they'll read everything that I write, so they do cross over. I have a lot of men who read Marcy and absolutely love it, because I think it is what I call, instead of chick, I'm going on again, but chick grit, I call mine. It's not really chick lit, chick grit is the estate series, so there's a bit of a girly writing, as I call it, but there's a bit of hard-hitting things in there as well.
Yeah, great. I can't believe I just said housewife. That's also dates me. I can't. It's a political nightmare, isn't it? Trying to describe. Whenever you try and generalise about groups of people, I get mums. Yeah. I should have said mums.
Yes, a lot of mums.
Yeah, good. So that you obviously enjoy that interaction, and you do that, but you don't have a sort of traditional, because a lot of people listening here are building their mailing list at the moment, or work off big mailing lists. But I guess you're not really at that stage. You might have a smallish mailing list, or do you have anything like that?
Yeah, I have a mailing list of about, I think about 2,500, and I get 50% of them that open it every. I only send one out every 2 months, and sometimes I think that's too much, but it isn't. They enjoy that. I get a lot of feedback from there, and I don't get many that actually don't get many unsubscribes. I've got one list that's on a free book that I give out, and then there's obviously one list that's been with me from day one, and it's just organic. I've never actually done any ads or anything on it, although I keep thinking that I should. I just never get around to it, to be fair, and you do need that VA. Yeah,
but you've got you say you're taking a little bit of time from writing now and maybe focus on marketing. It'd be really interesting to see what happens next with Mel and Marcy, because you've got, a fantastic foundation without really spending half your day every day marketing. If you do put even, 2 days a week or less than that for the next few months into it, I wonder what difference it'll make.
Yeah, it has surprised me when I look at things like book report, and then I can see that every time I put a book out, my backlist clearly goes straight up in the rankings again, and that's really, really nice for me, because the estate series wasn't actually published. It was published in 2012, and there's only one book come out in 2015, the fourth one in the series. The first three are still selling now, and they didn't come out. They came out in 2012, which is incredible, really. So if people buy one, they tend to go and buy the rest then, and I get some really good reviews on number 4 saying that I've read them all. It's, I've really enjoyed it. Sorry, I forgot the first bit of your question now.
That's all right. I was just wondering what's going to happen when you start marketing. It could be sensational, but we'll see. Anyway, we'll come back after you've done the course and see if you you get into it. Let's talk about writing for a little bit. So the actual writing process. How and where?
Where can be anywhere, but I do tend to work in my office or at the kitchen table with the laptop, depending on what I'm doing. How? I've got a set. I suppose I'm finishing my 14th book now, so I can sort of say every book is probably written different over the years, but I am just getting to the stage now where I am learning that this is what I do, and basically I do what I call a dirty draft, which is I'll sort of have a rough idea of beginning, middle and end of the book, and I write myself a synopsis so I know exactly where I'm going. And yes, I can veer off if I want to, but I know that that's where I'm going to end. And I get to know my characters for a bit in the back of my mind, normally when I'm working on something else. And then I sit down, and for 1 month I write the first 50,000, and I write a couple of thousand words a day if it comes out like that. I don't allow myself to look back. If there's any ideas that come up for the second draft, then I'll leave them until the second draft. And then it's another month doing the second draft, which then tends to iron out everything, make it into a kind of a book. And the third draft is making sense of everything. And the fourth draft that I do, which is just what I'm going to be starting doing now with this book that I'm working on, is basically once everything is in place and every single scene is in place and doesn't need to change, then I can start looking at all the language and enhancing all the fear, enhancing the emotion, making sure all the inner dialogue is right, and the sense of place is right. But until I've got that structure down, I find I can't do that. So that last draft is then probably take me a good 6 weeks to just go through everything and enhance what's there. And then hopefully that goes off to the editor then.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good process. And when you say draft, so do you literally start with another blank, Scrivener or Word document or whatever it is you write in, or do you start with the previous draft and sort of do a re-editing draft of it to make it the second draft? If you know what I mean?
I start with the same draft. So I'll have the first draft will have the 50,000 in, and then I'll create another one, a copy of it, which will be the second draft. And sometimes the second draft doesn't even add words. Sometimes a third draft doesn't even add words. I may add maybe 10, 15,000. It's that last fourth final draft when everything is in place that I feel that I can let my mind go and then start to evolve the book then. So it's the only way I can do it. I wish I could work a different way. Sometimes it's quite frustrating when you're in that third draft mode and you know that the words aren't adding up, but the story's getting there. And that second and that third draft for me are the hardest times. The first draft is a blast, and the fourth, I suppose, because you know that you've done all the hard work. But that second and third draft is I have to make myself sit down and do the work.
Yeah. I mean, that's an impressive system, and you've developed that just organically yourself. You didn't pick up one of the books on writing and followed a formula.
No, but I probably did that for the first 10 books because I think I absolutely love how-to books, and I read them still now. I just devour everything like that. And also when I'm reading somebody else's book, when I'm doing that second and third draft, I can't read anything at all because I know I will take in too much. But when I'm doing the other drafts, or when I'm not working on a book, the ideas that can then come from somebody else is just one little line that you'll think, oh, I need to do that, or I need to enhance that, not pinch the ideas, if you know what I mean. But I'm just thinking that, I should have done something like that, or maybe I'll take that into my next book. And so I think even reading, a lot of fiction sets you up, and the how-to books are great. I still love them now.
Yeah, I do as well. So Mel, also, you've had some exciting news recently, haven't you, in terms of options?
Yes, my psychological thriller, Watching Over You, has just been optioned for TV by a company called Great Point Media. And that's really exciting because that's been going on in the background now for a good 10 months and just all of a sudden been signed up, and we can announce it now. So it's wonderful. You never know whether anything's going to go to the next stage, but actually somebody having interest in you, it's another tick in the box. It's brilliant. That's
really exciting, and good luck with that. I mean, I don't know. I think in Hollywood, a million things get optioned all the time, and it is a fraught thing. In the UK, it tends to be a slightly smaller thing, and big production companies normally, in my experience, a couple of friends who've gone down this route, they kind of set their minds on it, and somebody's nodded and said, yeah, we're probably going to do this. And it seems to be, although it's still absolutely not a guarantee, it's a slightly higher thing than a Hollywood production company showing interest, which can sit there for 10 years. So, well, best of luck with that.
Although it is a Hollywood director who's actually bought the book.
Wow. Oh, okay. Yeah. So how involved are you in that now?
No, it's just been signed. It's literally just about a month ago, I think, actually, not even that long. So I haven't heard anything about it yet, so can't tell you anything. No. Okay, well, that's exciting, and we hope that goes well. And I think it's a good production company, isn't it? You're saying they've just done one of the high-profile British TV series. They have, yes. Obviously, it's called The Line of Duty. They're on their fifth series now. I absolutely love that programme, and to be fair, that's why all the scooters in the background are in my DS Eden getting my characters mixed up now. Yes, Eden Beresford books, because one of the main characters in there is a British actress called Vicky McClure, and I would love her to play my DS Eden Beresford, so that's why the scooters are on there, because she loves them as much as I do.
Oh, okay.
So, and she's had copies of the book, so who knows?
Great. And I think last time we spoke, we talked a little bit about how geographically important some of your work is, because you mentioned Stoke-on-Trent, which I don't know around the world how many people have heard of Stoke-on-Trent. It's quite famous in the UK. The Potteries is known as.
Exactly. I think that's the thing, the Potteries, or sometimes you can mention Robbie Williams, although some Americans haven't heard of Robbie Williams.
Right. They've had to take that, surely.
Yes, take that.
Yeah. And I know certainly the Estate series is very much about that area, and that geography is important, but I'm guessing it carries as well. I mean, I sort of glibly said that local people to Midlands must be reading it, but actually I think that type of, once you get inside an area that you know well, an author knows well, it becomes quite compelling, and it's important to you, isn't it, that geography?
Yeah, the Estate series is actually set nowhere. I set it, although people say to me, it's set in London, it's set in Manchester. I have some funny reviews telling people exactly where it is, and it's not set anywhere. And I purposely did that because I believe that there's an estate around the corner in every, even in America or anywhere, that people know about that you just don't want to go on. And you know it's there. It could be a mile down the road, it could be 5 miles down the road, but every nation has got places like that. So I set it that way purposely. And my DS Eden Beresford series, I use the same city. It's basically called Stockley, which obviously is a bit like Stoke-on-Trent, but it's never anywhere in an intentional place. But everybody, a few people will say, I have readers who will say that I know that estate. It is literally just around the corner from me, and that's the reason I did it. And when Eden Beresford went out, I had quite a lot of American readers then start reading the Estate series, and they call them Sink Estates over there.
Yeah.
And they really enjoyed them, and that really surprised me, because the Estate series had been out for so long and hadn't been able to crack the American audience, and all of a sudden, off the back of Eden, they did start to sell. And I've had some wonderful messages from people in America.
That's interesting. So it's an odd life, an author, isn't it? You have all these other personas, Marcy, these other towns. You'll never meet her, and you'll never go to the town, because they all exist in your head, Mel.
They do.
But,
I do have some weird conversations.
And then I turn to murder, of course. Yeah.
Yes.
Will be the quote that we take.
I must do a blog post for that, and then I turn to murder.
That'll be the quote we take away from this interview for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, look, we've hit the half an hour mark. I mean, I like following your career, Mel, and you're a fun person, and we should mention the photograph, shouldn't we, that happened at LBF, because we might stick that up on the video version of this, because actually, let me just start my camera again,
was great.
So you were taking, quite a nice posed photograph, weren't you? And then Mark Dawson and I were in the background, and we couldn't resist the opportunity to and no one noticed at the time. The person taking the photograph,
no, we didn't.
You didn't notice, and then later you saw me and Mark being. And we'll put that on the YouTube version
it is the best photo of LBF, though. It was great.
Yeah, it was fun, and we always like bumping into you there. So, and very excited, very excited about the option. So I know. I always quote this as a great Douglas Adams quote about when he optioned Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that it's going to be made any decade now, and and unfortunately he did not live long enough to see it made. And actually, wonderful books, but it was a terrible film, so it's just as well. But you've got a real strong possibility there, so we're going to stay in touch, Mel, and vicariously, you live vicariously through your characters. We're going to live vicariously through you as an author who's been successful in the indie space and quite inspirational to a lot of people.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you set that up very well at the beginning. Stoke is a sort of heartland of the Industrial Revolution a couple of hundred years ago in the UK, and like all the places that used to thrive on industry, when times change, fortunes went down a little bit. I guess Detroit might be a good kind of American equivalents? There's areas of Detroit that are pretty poor now because industries changed.
Most of Detroit, yeah. It's Detroit obviously with cars and Stoke with pottery.
Yeah, pottery, the potteries, yeah.
Yeah, different in terms of the products that were made. But I think Detroit is probably a little harder off than Stoke is with things like problems with the water and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, Stoke is a tough area. I've been there a few times, as I said.
But you're a tough guy, so...
Yeah.
No one's going to mess with you, are they?
No one. There's no nonsense when I'm in town.
No. The Godfather, they call him.
Absolutely.
And Mel has thrived on that. She lives in the area. She's created her fictitious town, which is very clearly based on sort of local areas. And she obviously enjoys writing about the intricacies of family life in that environment, and she's made that her own. It's quite refreshing and unique in that sense. I suppose there's a series called Shameless, which I referenced, I think, in the interview with Mel, of which there's been both a UK and US version of it, and it's similar to that, perhaps not quite as comedic in places. But I love talking to Mel. She was there early days, 2010, 2011, around there, when there was not really very much, there wasn't things like the SPF community and Nick and so on, where you could just go online and start to get advice and help, and she had to find other people doing the same thing and work a path. She hasn't done a huge amount of marketing. I think she was lucky in the sense in those early days of being at the vanguard, and visibility was perhaps easier than it is today. But she's keen as buttons, I think, to get on and start doing...
Keen as what?
Buttons. Keen as buttons?
No, you just made that up.
No, you're shaking your head?
John's shaking his head.
I'm pretty certain in the Black
Keen as mustard. There we go.
Keen as mustard. That makes... neither make much sense, but she's very keen.
She's very keen
to get on with new techniques,
yes.
And we love bumping into her at the London Book Fair, particularly when we're standing behind ruining her nicely posed photographs.
Yes, absolutely. You shouldn't have mooned her.
Probably shouldn't have done that. Yeah, I can't help myself. Good. Thank you very much indeed. I did tell you that after a couple of author interviews, we're going to move back into the realm of marketing, and we are going to talk about author collaborations and Nick Stevenson's move into that area and what he's setting up to try and help authors get together with each other and collaborate. And that's going to be an interesting interview with Nick. We're always happy to have him back on the podcast. Always a great interviewee as well. So that's next Friday. Until then, if you want to pick up the back catalogue of SPF podcasts, it's been put into a book actually, as well as being able to go onto iTunes and Stitcher, etc., and our own website and the YouTube channel and the multiple places and the app where you're going to find the podcast. You can also get this book if you go to selfpublishingformula.com/vault, VAULT. And the advantage of that, of course, is unlike a list of audio files or video files, you can search this for topics that you're interested in and working on at the time. We should also talk about patreon.com, which is our way of allowing you to become... look at this mug coming into shot if you're watching on YouTube. The mug that says James Blatch in huge letters on there. That's amazing that Mark's so magnanimous about the organisation that he allowed me to have my name. Oh, hang on. You don't spell James Blatch M-A-R-K.
James Blatch's self-publishing failures.
I suppose that would be a bit of a fraud if my name was on there. Patreon.com/SPF Podcast. We're enormously grateful to the people who've become supporters of the podcast. Helps us keep it going, keeps our enthusiasm going, pays for all this equipment and travel. And that's great for you to be a part of it. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, that's it. So until next Friday and our old friend Nick Stevenson, have a great week, have a productive week, and we'll see you then. Bye.
You've been listening to the Self-Publishing Formula podcast. Visit us at selfpublishingformula.com for more information, show notes, and links on today's topics. You can also sign up for our free video series on using Facebook ads to grow your mailing list. If you've enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a review on iTunes. We'll see you next time.